The 2010s felt kind of like the wild, wild west move for kids animated movies. Not only did we have two dominant ways of telling a story, either doing what was now becoming the traditional 3D animation as 2D was on its way out, or you could do what was now becoming a very common way to tell a story, real people interacting with CGI animals. Amongst all your Toy Stories and your Ice Ages and your Shrek, I feel like one studio back in this time was really making a name for themselves, and that was Illumination, with their first film Despicable Me being a runaway success, and their second film The Lorax actually being really... Hang on. I feel like I'm forgetting something when I say The Lorax is their second film. Oh god. In 2011, Illumination put their foot forward into the classic genre of man talking to animal, being the first to get James Marsden before Sega would get him. This movie is very clearly inspired by the successes of Alvin and the Chipmunks, Stuart Little, the Garfield movie, fucking Air Buddies. In fact, the director of Hop, Tim Hill, also directed the very first Alvin and the Chipmunks movie, as well as A Garfield: A Tale of Two Kitties. Hop features a bunny named EB, I wonder what that could stand for, in his adventure to find himself, biding time before he's crowned the next Easter Bunny by his dad. In his adventure, he runs into local piece of shit son Fred, who was trying to turn his life around and was once visited by the Easter Bunny as a small child. Hop to me sticks out like a sore thumb amongst Illumination's other films, as none of them would really go back to doing this CGI animal talking to man. Most of them would just do what is now Illumination's bread and butter, animated slot movies on an incredibly tight budget. This was also Illumination's least profitable movie, going off of box office numbers, with its budget set at $63 million and them only making $88.5 million, a $125 million profit. Oh no. But what actually happens in Hop? The movie starts with Fred immediately saying he is the first human Easter Bunny, and I will be real, this got me off guard. I didn't expect this movie to start with James Marsden talking to the camera about how he was the world's first human Easter Bunny. Fine, you got me interested. We're then introduced to EB, a young child rabbit who at the time is being told by his father that he will inherit and one day lead the candy factory. Cut to the most boring opening scene I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't know why this stuck out to me on my watch. It was just nothing. It was just, obviously I think it's very important to credit people who made movies. I'm not saying that in the slightest. I just thought there was nothing in this scene. It was so boring. After the whole introduction to young EB and young Fred seeing the Easter Bunny as a kid, we cut to the modern day where EB doesn't want to be the Easter Bunny and Fred doesn't want to work. After Fred's sister's given them a place to house sit for a while in a job interview, Fred runs into EB and they both work on their dreams together. This might be reading a little bit too much into the movie's plot, but I also did pick up a lot of undertones of racism during this the opening scenes and throughout the entire movie, and as a matter of fact. Please tell me I'm the first person to say this about 2011's Hop. Carlos, who is the current Easter Bunny's right-hand man, is clearly inspired to be from Hispanic origins, and unfortunately comes with a lot of racial stereotypes like having broken English.
Fine, fine. But is there any report on my son?
Oh, yes, I have the report. The sun will be shining, foggy times are lifting, Easter will be clear sailing, senor.
He very much wants to be the next Easter Bunny, but the movie constantly says, no, how could a chick be the next Easter Bunny? It has to be a rabbit, which, okay. They constantly reiterate this throughout the entire film, and it feels very strange that this is mostly coming from British Easter Bunnies, being Hugh Laurie specifically, who plays EB's dad. While my friend Chris and I were watching this, we just couldn't help but notice, and it feels incredibly out of place in a kids movie. Racism between bunnies and chicks being represented by British people and a very poor Hispanic impression. Moving on, the plot is kind of just a series of random events happening in whatever order, until we get to the talent show part, where EB leaves Fred to go to the show, and Fred gets kidnapped by the Pink Beret Bunnies, who are there to get EB back to his home and make him the next Easter Bunny. Thankfully, EB comes back to save the day, stopping Carlos and crowning Fred the co-Easter Bunny. Yay. The movie ends with this dumbass scene with EB drumming to try to distract one of the other chicks, Phil, from doing a liftoff. So Carlos, who is now a hybrid of a bunny and a chick, can go deliver crickets to the children for Easter. It is a real plot point, and it is kind of stupid, honestly. It's so stupid. As you'll realize throughout this movie, EB is kind of a selfish prick. I genuinely could not stand to watch this fucking bunny ruin everything for Donut Lord. When EB and Fred first meet, it's when Fred almost accidentally run over EB, which EB immediately starts guilting Fred about to let him stay with him. EB, you didn't check both ways before you started walking. It's clearly your fucking fault. He's constantly ruining shit for Fred, fucking up his job interview, his house, with zero fucking empathy. Why do I care so much about this? Russell Brand plays EB, and I kinda like him in this. He's so unapologetically British. If this movie was made in like 2019, I bet James Corden would be EB. He He has many mannerisms of speech of being British, and I honestly think it rounds out the characters a lot. I really fucking hate him as a character, but honestly, I am very charmed by the British in him for some reason. I don't know why. James Marsden is playing the human lead, and I think he's alright in this, though a bit miscast. He was pushing 40, and playing this character who seems like he's 26 or something is a bit weird for me though. I think he did a good job though. There was one scene where he really wasn't working with the CGI, like he was grabbing EB by the ears, and he wasn't really looking at the ears. It looked a bit weird, but I honestly can't really blame him for that. Maybe something went wrong with production, maybe they changed the scene later. It's just one mistake. I don't really care that much. This movie also features David Hasselhoff as himself, and as someone who was born in 2003, I only recognize David Hasselhoff from the SpongeBob movie and this. I've read that he's an incredibly important actor and is the most watched man on TV. He has like a Guinness World Record for that, but it's just kind of funny. I thought that was just funny to mention. Everyone else in the cast did fine to passable jobs. Sorry, Penny from Big Bang Theory, I really have nothing to say about you, though I do think you had one of the best scenes in the entire movie. This scene where you're like looking after James Marsden as he's house sitting, that was clearly the best scene in the entire movie, and I will not take any arguments on that. The animation is fine. I think EB looks decently fine. The art style makes him stick out a bit too much, as Illumination does really specialize in that cartoony stuff. He's just a bit too cartoonish for me, in my opinion. But I thought the Pink Berets model looked very unfinished at times, and don't even get me started on how Fred looks in the Candy Factory scene. Jesus Christ. Something that's also very important to know and almost unavoidable when talking about Hop is the product placements. Now, while they didn't really stick out to me besides a very strong Volvo one, in fact, I actually had a full block of chocolate, which I'm still going through, next to me when I was watching this movie. I really felt no urge to go and eat it. Though I did notice the Hershey Kisses. You cannot sneak that past me. That was quite egregious, honestly. Overall, Hop definitely fits in with the 2010s animation scene, but I think there's really not that much worth going back to for this one, especially being sandwiched between Illumination's better two films. I actually did get to see this one in the theaters back in the day, though they did cut before the ending happened. I distinctly remember this for some reason. It was the final scene and they just cut it. So I'm glad I was finally able to see the true ending of this film. I think I'm gonna give Hop a 4 out of 10. I really hate saying that like, oh, it would be fine for kids, because I genuinely think children's animated media, you can do so much with it, like Spider-Verse or The Wild Robot. Like, you're actually able to tell very decent stories. Yet if you just put this on for a kid, I'm sure they'd have a good time with it. Thanks for watching.